in my mind, and it should go up on appeal because it was a sham trial. That's the bottom line of the whole thing. The campaign will appeal, President Trump will appeal this rigged verdict, as he should, and try to get some justice. But there was no justice in New York today. There's no question about that. And interestingly, as you look at the polling from across the country in a lot of individual states, you see that the people of this country, independent voters particularly, saw this for what it was, and that was lawfare against President Trump. Another curious thing that came out today, they scheduled the sentencing for the Thursday before the Republican National Convention. What a coincidence that that would happen. So I'm not surprised by anything that happened today. If you are surprised by what happened today, I would encourage you to pay more attention to what's going on in this campaign. And look, if the election were held in the next 24 hours, President Trump would be the next president of the United States. The Biden campaign knows it. Politico just did a story here in the last 24 hours talking about how panicked Democrats are about Joe Biden. And we saw today that they are indeed panicked and that they will do anything they can. The Democrats can't win this presidential race on the facts or on the issues. We know that. The president is upside down on every major issue facing the voters of this country, whether it's inflation or the border or interest rates, gas prices, every imaginable big issue up there, this president is upside down on. And so they had to weaponize the legal system to go after their opponent. That's the unprecedented thing here, really. It's the weaponization of the federal legal system to go after a presidential candidate. I hope we never see this moment again because it's shameful. And so I'm not surprised by what happened today. The victims here, unfortunately, are the American people. The truth is the victims here are the American people. They will continue this in this venue and others to go after Donald Trump. We expect that that will be the case. We won't be surprised by any of that, not because it's right, but because the Democrats have no choice. The only way to beat him at this point is to go after him by weaponizing the legal system with Democrat prosecutors, with Democrat judges, with Democrat juries. The list goes on and on. So I'm looking forward. We are going to have the Republican convention, obviously, here, and we will be nominating Donald Trump at that convention. I will tell you the phone calls and messages that I have gotten in the last hour or so have, to a person, have been very strongly supportive of the president. So it's unfortunate that America is at this point where a sitting president in the White House can weaponize the legal system against his opponent, but that's where we are, and America will regret this moment in a larger way, I think.
Brian, do you think this can ultimately benefit former President Trump politically?
Well, I'll say this, as I referred before, what you've seen in the polling now is that people are factoring this in. They know what's going on. I mean, I think people need to remember that they threatened to impeach the president from the day he went down that escalator to announce he was going to run back in 2016. Day, by week, by month, by year, they have been after Donald Trump, and today they try to get him, and this decision will go up on appeal. But I had somebody suggest a while ago that they may have guaranteed his victory today, and that might be.
You talked a little bit about the timeline with the RNC and given what's going to be happening in the courtroom so shortly just before it.
Sure.
Can you add it? Do you think that's going to have any more impact on rallying your base or potentially a negative impact?
Well, it will certainly strengthen our base on the short term. I got swamped with messages right away. So I think and you know what? It's not just Republicans that see the weaponization of the court system. Independent voters see it overwhelmingly. You see it nationally, but also in the state-by-state polls, including here in Wisconsin. So their willingness to go after him personally, but also, frankly, politically, because we all know that's what's really going on here. It's the only way for them to tear down Donald Trump because they cannot do it in the poll. They can't do it at the ballot box. And so this They had to make this happen today, and I want to make this point. They had to make this conviction happen today because they will lose the election if they don't. And the American people know it, and that's the trouble now the Democrats will have, is they have to go to the people of this country and say, we're willing to weaponize judges, juries, prosecutors, because we can't beat Donald Trump otherwise.
All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Welcome into the Action 2 News newsroom. You just heard from Brian Schimming. He is the chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party. He was addressing the late breaking news this afternoon of former President Donald Trump being convicted of 34 felonies. So I want to bring you in as you heard from him there, but let me show you our website story here that we have right now, detailing exactly what happened and unfolded late this afternoon. It was a monumental day in New York. For the first time, a former president has become a convicted felon. Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 felony counts for falsifying business records in what became known as his hush money trial. The jury deliberated for nearly 10 hours before reaching a verdict this afternoon. The 6-week trial centered on the concealment of a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels just ahead of the 2016 election. The jury found the manner in which Trump reimbursed Cohen constituted falsification of business records. So there you just witnessed and heard from Wisconsin GOP Chairman Brian Schimming. He made a statement on the exact verdict today. And you heard from him, but I want to kind of go over exactly what he talked about. He called that this verdict was a sham. He said that the sentencing is scheduled for, I believe, July 11th. He says that is not a coincidence. He says that's about a week before the Republican National Convention here in Wisconsin. He says it's not a coincidence. He also mentioned that he believes that this verdict strengthens their base, saying that this is a clear weaponization of the justice system. He said that Democrats needed this conviction today to beat Donald Trump in the polls. He says when they do have the National Convention here in Wisconsin, he says they will nominate Donald Trump as the Republican candidate, despite what happened here in New York today, late breaking news. Brian Schimming says he's not surprised by what happened today. He says it was flawed from the start. And again, he says from his perspective that the Democrats would do anything to beat Donald Trump at the polls. We did receive a statement from the White House. I'll read that here for you as well. This came from the Biden administration. So in reaction to the verdict today, they say in part, quote, "There is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president," end quote. We'll have much more on this historic verdict later tonight, but again, we wanted to bring you live the Wisconsin GOP chairman, Brian Schimming. He addressed the verdict here this afternoon, calling it a sham, and that when that convention comes to Wisconsin this summer, he says they will nominate Donald Trump as the Republican candidate. He says that this will strengthen their base, and they will plan to, there's likely going to be an appeal. Donald Trump said that himself, that this is far from over. We'll have much more on this breaking news story late this afternoon for you tonight on Action 2 News as we continue to follow this developing story. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll return you back to Local News Live.